So having a look at the contingency model, um, I think everyone's obviously had a fair share of their contingency over the course of COVID. One in particular I'll talk about is when I first started the position at my previous nursery. Um, it was the her the manager was also the chef. She was also partly a room leader. It was a very interesting dynamic in the fact that all of a sudden it was only open to key workers. Some days there was like 10 children and 4 members of staff, and those staff ended up sort of having multiple roles rather than one. I found that contingency really interesting because I started during it. So it was interesting to see the evolution of when I started with just those few children and few members of staff to um, developing back into a normal setting and how the leadership changed. I found that really fascinating in the way the approach, because when we first started, the contingency was basically all staff all in, but we all sort of worked at the same. We all sort of worked in the same level. However, when I came in, I was sort of told to shake things up a little bit, get a bit more of a plan in action. In the room, quite often there was just me and two other members of staff, as the manager was always out back dealing with other situations. So quite often I would have to lead that room, um, structure it, put the bubbles in place, that sort of stuff. I felt very authoritarian, but I also liked including the staff into what I was doing. However, due to the previous management style, it did keep sort of falling in as like a blame sort of thing. It was very interesting dynamic. Um, anyway, moving on from there, we decided to transfer over to the curiosity approach. There was many different levels of leadership and management, and they all sort of contrasted together, which was really interesting. So I was always part of the SLT team. I've now myself moved on to a different setting and am a deputy manager there, and the whole dynamic is completely different. Um, Back to the contingency in terms of immediate effect, we started changing over to the curiosity approach, and in that time many of our staff decided that the approach wasn't for them, so we ended up losing quite a lot of the original staff members, which created a shortage across the system, across the board. One thing that I will always remember is our manager was the first to step in the room. She was always the first to take over cooking if the chef was sick. She was the first to come into the room and be with us in ratios. She still does now, no longer, even though I'm no longer at the setting, if they're short staffed, she will be in that room. She will change her entire role and be in that room. She will report to the room leader. She will basically just become another member of staff in the room, which I think is really important to act so decisively when it comes down to basically situations you can't control, anomalies. It's probably the best word to choose. Um, I also want to just say a hats off to the Ukrainian president. Obviously, oh, hello. Obviously, they're having a bit of a time at the moment with what's going on over there, and he has really shaped up and stepped up in his role. He was obviously never even really considered presidential because he was a comedian beforehand, and he definitely has got the continuing structure because he has acted phenomenally for that company. So just a hats off to that president. Yeah, that's about it really. I think it shows it shows a good leader from somebody that's sort of good at the runaround. So I think a good leader is able to act in a continuum. They are able to act, like pull something out their sleeve last minute. They are able to sort of get their team going, even when things are challenging. They're able to sort of see the light and encourage and inspire, and continue to do so. It's the ducks swimming in water everything's happening underneath the surface, but they just look so elegant on top. So everything's ticking away, and all the panic is sort of held in for your staff members. And I think that is a key element to being a I don't even know if I'm saying it, a contingent leader, is being able to control a situation when the situation just happens unexpectedly. I've been in situations beforehand where I've had to make decisions about the manager being there and filled them in, and they have had to have been like split decisions there and then, and the manager hasn't been present. Um, I think that's why I am where I am today, because I will always put the needs of the child first, um, in terms of their care and their development. I will put their needs first before my own, um, and I will put my staff first as well. I think that's kind of where I've got to today, is that I have been in many situations where I've had to act quickly, and things have just not gone to plan, and I've just sort of coped with it. And I'm not being big headed, but I do, even though it's stressful, I am quite good in those situations now. It took a long time to develop those skills, but yeah, there have been quite a few situations in the past where I've had to be quick on my feet, or things have not gone to plan, or we've just had to change things up last minute, and that just is part of the job, I suppose. Working in a nursery, no 2 days are the same. You can have a rough guide of what the day's going to be like. Quite often it doesn't always plan out that way. Which is one of the beauties of the job. You don't really know what the day's going to bring you. Yeah, have a lovely day, everyone.